You wake up with a list, not written down, just burned into your mind, things you need to do, things you want to do, things you've been putting off for weeks, and you tell yourself today's the day, today you'll finally start, but then you sit down, and nothing happens. Not because you don't care, not because you don't want to, but because there's this invisible weight pressing down on you, this fog between intention and action, and the harder you try to push through it, the heavier it gets. So you scroll, you watch, you distract. You do anything except the thing you actually wanted to do. And by the end of the day, you're exhausted. Not from working, from fighting yourself. From the guilt of knowing you had time but couldn't make yourself move. And the voice starts, the one that sounds like disappointment. You're lazy, you're unmotivated, you're wasting your potential. And you believe it. Because what else could it be? But here's what that voice doesn't know. You're not lazy, you're not unmotivated, you're mentally exhausted. And there's a difference. Let's be clear about what mental exhaustion actually is. It's not tiredness. You can sleep for 10 hours and still wake up drained. It's not sadness. You can laugh, function, show up, and still feel like you're operating on fumes. Mental exhaustion is what happens when your nervous system has been running on overdrive for so long that it can't distinguish between rest and survival anymore. It's decision fatigue, compounded by emotional suppression, compounded by invisible labor that no one sees, including you. And if you ignore this feeling long enough, it doesn't turn into motivation, it turns into paralysis. You want to do things. That's the cruelest part. You have ideas, goals, projects you're genuinely excited about, but the gap between wanting and doing feels insurmountable, like there's a wall you can't see but can't break through, and people tell you to just start, just do 5 minutes, just take the first step, as if you haven't tried that 100 times, as if willpower is the missing piece, but it's not, because willpower requires energy, and you're running on empty. Here's what's actually happening. Your brain is maxed out, not because you're weak, but because you're processing more than you realize. Every decision you make, no matter how small, costs energy. And you're making thousands of these micro decisions every single day, while also managing the emotional labor of existing in a world that demands you be on all the time. You're regulating your emotions in public, performing competence at work, managing other people's expectations, suppressing your real feelings to keep the peace. And all of this invisible work is draining your mental battery without you even noticing. That matters more than you think. You're not doing nothing. You're doing everything, just not the things people can see. So by the time you sit down to do the thing you actually care about, there's nothing left. Your brain isn't rejecting the task. It's protecting you. It's saying, we don't have the bandwidth for this right now. We're already at capacity. And instead of listening, you call yourself lazy. This is the shame loop, and it's killing you slowly. Because every time you fail to do the thing, you add another layer of guilt. Another story about what's wrong with you, another reason to believe you're broken. But you're not broken. You're overloaded. And there's a difference. Let me show you what mental exhaustion actually looks like, because it's not what you think. It's sitting in front of your computer for 2 hours, staring at a blank document, hating yourself for not being able to start. It's wanting to read, but only being able to scroll. It's knowing you need to rest, but feeling guilty every second you're not producing. It's canceling plans, not because you don't want to go, but because the thought of being on feels unbearable. It's taking an hour to respond to a text, because choosing the right words feels like solving a math problem. It's avoiding phone calls because your brain can't handle one more conversation. And here's the part people don't talk about. It's feeling exhausted after doing nothing. After a day of rest, you're more tired than before. Because rest isn't rest when your mind won't stop running. You lie down, but your thoughts don't. They loop, they spiral. They replay conversations from 3 years ago. They rehearse arguments that will never happen. They calculate risks for decisions you haven't even made yet. Your body is still, but your mind is sprinting. And that's exhausting in a way sleep can't fix. This is what happens when your nervous system can't find safety. When you've been in low-level survival mode for so long that you've forgotten what calm actually feels like. Not the kind of calm that comes from distraction, the kind that comes from actually feeling safe enough to let go, and you can't think your way into that. You can't logic yourself out of nervous system dysregulation, because this isn't happening in your mind, it's happening in your body. And your body doesn't speak in words. It speaks in exhaustion. in numbness, in the inability to do the things you desperately want to do. But here's what nobody tells you. That inability, it's not a character flaw, it's a signal. Your body is trying to protect you, not from the task, from the collapse that would come if you kept pushing without addressing what's underneath. Because underneath the exhaustion is something you've been avoiding. Maybe it's grief you never processed. Maybe it's anger you're too afraid to feel. Maybe it's a life that looks fine on paper, but doesn't match who you actually are. And instead of feeling it, you've been managing it, controlling it, suppressing it. And suppression is exhausting. It takes more energy to hold everything in than it does to let it out. This is why rest doesn't work. Because you're not resting. You're just pausing the performance. The second you're alone with your thoughts, the managing starts again. The calculating, the ruminating, the trying to figure out how to be okay without actually dealing with why you're not. And that's the trap. You think you're lazy because you're not doing. But you're doing so much invisible labor that there's no energy left for anything visible. Here's the shift. Stop calling it laziness. Start calling it what it is. Depletion, overload, nervous system fatigue. Because once you name it correctly, you stop treating yourself like the problem. You stop trying to fix your motivation or discipline yourself into action. You start asking the real question. What's draining me that I'm not acknowledging? Maybe it's the job you've been pretending is fine. Maybe it's the relationship where you can never fully relax. Maybe it's the constant low-level anxiety of existing in a world that feels unstable. Maybe it's the emotional labor of being the person everyone relies on while never being able to rely on anyone yourself. Whatever it is, it's real. And it's costing you. Not in visible ways, but in the slow erosion of your capacity to show up for the life you actually want. And the worst part? You know this already. You just don't want to admit it. Because admitting it means you'd have to change something. And change feels impossible when you're already this tired. So you stay stuck, telling yourself you're lazy, beating yourself up for not doing more, all while carrying a weight that would break most people. But here's what you need to hear. You're not most people. You've been carrying this for so long that you've normalized it. You've convinced yourself that this is just how life feels, that everyone is this tired, that this is what being an adult is. But it's not. And deep down you know that too, because there was a time, maybe years ago, when you had energy, when things didn't feel this hard, when you could start something without the crushing weight of dread. And you miss that version of yourself, the one who could just do things without it being a battle. They're still in there, buried under years of suppression, expectation, and survival. Buried under the exhaustion of pretending you're fine when you're not. Buried under the belief that rest is something you have to earn instead of something you're allowed to take. You don't need to earn rest. You need rest to survive. And you've been surviving for too long. This is why you feel stuck. Not because you're lazy, but because you're trying to build a life with no foundation. You're running on empty and wondering why you can't sprint. You're asking your body for energy it doesn't have. And instead of refueling, you're adding more guilt to the tank. So what now? What do you do when you're too tired to fix being tired? You stop trying to fix it. You stop trying to optimize it. You stop treating exhaustion like a problem to solve and start treating it like information to listen to. Your exhaustion is telling you something. That you've been giving more than you're receiving. That you've been performing more than you're living. That you've been surviving more than you're thriving. And until you listen, until you actually honor what your body is screaming at you, nothing changes. This doesn't mean quit everything. It doesn't mean give up. It means stop fighting yourself. Stop calling yourself lazy when what you actually are is depleted. Stop demanding productivity from a nervous system that's begging for safety. Because you can't hate yourself into healing. You can't shame yourself into energy. You can't guilt yourself into action. All you can do is acknowledge the truth, that you're tired, really tired. And that's not a moral failing. It's a human response to an inhuman amount of pressure. And maybe, just maybe, the most productive thing you can do right now is nothing. Not the distracted nothing, the intentional nothing, the kind where you stop trying to fix, manage, or control and just let yourself exist without a purpose. Because you've spent so long being useful that you've forgotten you're allowed to just be. You've spent so long proving your worth that you've forgotten your worth isn't conditional. You've spent so long running that you've forgotten that stopping isn't the same as quitting. This is your permission, not to do more, but to stop pretending you're supposed to be doing more. Not to fix yourself, but to accept that maybe you were never broken in the first place. Just tired, so deeply, painfully tired. And if you've been waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to rest, this is it. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to prove you're tired enough to deserve it. You're tired, that's enough. You're not lazy. You never were. You're just a person who's been running on survival mode for so long that you forgot what it feels like to actually live. And now you know. And knowing is where it starts.